Welcome back, everyone. This is Austin Revel with 2FC Tactical in our From the Vault series, featuring unique and historical firearms that we have coming through our shop, as well as our personal collection and some of the opportunities that we have gotten to look at guns that you wouldn't normally see. And there are surprisingly a lot of those out there. Most people would be surprised at what people would own, and we have the fortunate experience to get to play around with a lot of them. Today we have a real treat for you. We have the 1886 Kropatschek rifle here for you. This is one of the Steyr Portuguese models. There was a bunch of iterations of these. The French made some. Look at Ian McCullen's Forgotten Weapons video on the 1884 French Kropatschek rifle. And there is very variations of these guns that we see a multitude of countries playing around with. And you got to think back to the time. You know, it's 18, in this case, 86. What's happened? Well, in terms of the firearms world, at least the firearm technology world, you had the American Civil War, which just advanced firearms in a rate that we had not seen. Some of that is because of the industrialization that is starting to happen. Some of that's just because of new technologies that are coming onto the battlefield, as well as new tactics. And the other parts of it is just people are becoming more imaginative on what they can do. And when you look at this one, this is kind of a tweener. This is the bridge gap rifle, the missing link, if you will, that goes from those Civil War era guns, those muzzle loading rifles, those single shot trapdoor carbines, like the Sharps that you see, to the modern, or what we would call the modern bolt action that we would see make its appearance in World War I, World War II, and come to fame in the 20th century. Something like the K98 here that I have in my personal collection, right? You'll see some similarities as this would eventually help drive forward into the modern era of bolt action rifles. When we take a deep dive into this thing, it has some unique features. And you can see why countries moved off of it too as well, just from its complexity, and it's a very odd system, if you will. So when we take a look at this, here, this gun has one of the most unique features that you'll ever see. It is a tube fed, just like, say, the Winchester 1887 shotgun that we did, or even a Winchester 1894. It's a tube fed bolt action rifle. So you would load your cartridges down into the magazine this way, and then as you ran your bolt, there's a spring that would actuate the cartridge into the chamber for firing. So very different than the ones we think of, say, in like the K98 or even, say, the Lee-Enfields. Stripper clip fed and honestly quicker to load than this, which is one of the reasons why I moved off on this. This also had the unfortunate fate of being a black powder gun made in 1886. And just a few years later, smokeless powder comes out and everything goes smokeless. Not only can you get better ballistics out of smokeless powder, which is the main reason, also you don't get the big, black smoke that comes out of it that would dull the battlefields. So it kind of very quickly got outdated just by the technologies happening. Now, surprisingly, though, they found out that this receiver actually was strong enough to take smokeless powder. So these particular guns had a very unique opportunity of being some of the first ever converted into a smokeless powder rifle. These were made for the Portuguese military. They feature a few different variations. The Portuguese would add a handguard on top here to cover the barrel. This is not one of those. This is one of the earlier variations. That was a later variation that did do this. Some of the things you'll notice is the bolt is a little bit more complex with cuts and machining versus a modern bolt. You do feature kind of that old style straight line bolt with a large knob there. This is made by Styer. You can see the Styer mark right there. Obviously, Styer is Austrian in the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. Now, these rifles were made to shoot blunt nose cartridges, which we happen to have an example of today. So here for you, So this is not the actual round that it would shoot. This one's chambered in 8x56 Mannlicher, but it would have been a blunt nose cartridge, very much like that. This is what we saw being used in the battlefields, especially in World War I, all the way up through World War I. The Spitzer cartridge, the pointed cartridge, would come a little bit later. This is a 303 round, but that is roughly how it would look. The actual 8x56 Mannlicher, this is a Spitzer Mannlicher round. This particular one is from 1938, World War II. It was used by the Nazis. That's a rifle, the M95 34 Styer, that we have an opportunity to show you. I'll give you a brief peek. We should do a video on it all of its own. But here's a Styer 8x56 Mannlicher M95 34 that I have in my personal collection. We do get them in the shop from time to time. But that's what this one would shoot, with the more ballistically sound pointed in. And we would see the firearm cartridge technology really take off around this time too. So let's just look at the Americas, for instance. This is a 30-03 round. 30-03 meaning a 30 cal designed in 1903. We're more familiar with the 30-06 that came out just 3 years later. What is the main difference between these cartridges? Well, one's a Spitzer cartridge, one's not. So this rifle is kind of a bridge rifle. It is a rifle that kind of brought together two worlds. We would not get the modern ones without something like this. What's really cool about the Kropatschek design is there was a bunch, like I mentioned before, there's a bunch of countries that experimented with it. France being notable. And we have some French rifles coming up. I don't have a French example of the Kropatschek gun, unfortunately, but Ian McCollum over at Forgotten Weapons did a video on an 1884 version of that. That's truly fascinating. You should watch it. But everyone was kind of ripping off this design because at the time, they thought it was the best way to go forward. As firearms progressed, stripper clip fed internal magazines were a lot faster to load than something like this. But what's cool about this one is it does feature a few modern designs that would make its way into the modern gun. So, for instance, you have a very modern bayonet mounting lug, something that would be featured widely World War I, World War II. You would see a very similar design. Since this is a magazine tube here, again, very similar to, say, the Winchester 1894s, the cleaning rod is offset slightly. Just a very interesting feature, just to make up for the fact that you couldn't run it in the magazine tube underneath like you would typically see in a modern Mauser. And again, like I said, this is kind of the unfortunate in-between that it didn't really last very long because smokeless powder, of course, was part of it. The other part of it was the Gewehr 88 would come out just a few years later. The Gewehr 88 is referencing 1888. And that ended up being the rifle for choice for all boatload of countries. The United States had an up-close and personal view of that rifle when we fought the Spanish-American War. And that's one of the reasons why the Krag rifle ended up going away, is because the rate of fire for the Gewehr 88 was much higher than the side-loading Krag rifle. That's kind of similar to this. You got to remember that the militaries of the time looked at these things differently. They were concerned about ammunition use. They were concerned about the effectiveness of being able to control fire with something that you could shoot at a very rapid pace. So they were a bit slow adopting more modern technology to it. They figured the slower, the better. And obviously that was proven not true. And that was proven not true very quickly when France and Russia, for instance, had a little bit of a spat. And we saw like the Winchester 1895 contracts make an appearance. So that there is a very quick history of repeating rifles versus the slower bolt action conflicts, and then they very quickly, the bolt action guys kind of look around and go like, "Oh, you need to upgrade this," and it wasn't really fully realized until the 1930s. That's really when semi-automatic rifles became a thing, as like the M1 Grand, which we have right here in a personal collection, right? We would see that really make its appearance, or the SVT 40. But we would see these rifles first, and these rifles had to come first. We could not get there without these. So I just want to bring this to you guys. It's a very cool rifle. again, featuring some of the more interesting things that we will see later, you know, the bolt safety, so on and so forth. But till next time, this was the Steyr M90 or M1886, excuse me. And I hope you enjoyed it. We have a lot more coming to you guys. We've had a slew of historical firearms come through our shop. Please come check us out. Check us out online. And till next time.